I have us on page 40, and I believe we were down a ways. Can someone tell me what lines we were on page 40? It was near to the end, I think. It's an extraordinary passage, this one, so we need to cover quite a bit in depth. We do have, does anyone remember? We can begin with the magician order of the cosmic mind. That would be a good place. You see, what I have done now is I have made a decision that because because so much of Savitri, Sri Aurobindo capitalizes words, then I have decided to include all the capitalized words with his definitions, or mothers. Rarely mothers, but sometimes mothers are very beautiful, and I've included them. So the magician order of the cosmic mind, Sri Aurobindo has much to say because he actually defines the cosmic mind. And I'd like to go through this with you briefly. He says, nevertheless, the fact of this intervention from above, the fact that behind all our original thinking or authentic perception of things, there is a veiled, a half-veiled, or a swift, unveiled intuitive element. It is enough to establish a connection between mind and what is above it. It opens a passage of communication and of entry into the superior spirit ranges. He hyphenates spirit ranges. There is also the reaching out of mind to exceed the personal ego limitation, to see things in a certain impersonality and universality. Impersonality is the first character of cosmic self. Universality, non-limitation by the single or limiting point of view, is the character of cosmic perception. And knowledge. This tendency is therefore a widening, however rudimentary, of these restricted mind areas towards cosmicity, towards a quality which is the very character of the higher mental planes, towards that superconscient cosmic mind, which, we have suggested, must, in the nature of things, be the original mind action, of which ours is only a derivative and inferior process. Quite complex, but it's the life divine, after all. Now, in the synthesis of yoga, he says, there is one cosmic mind, one cosmic life, one cosmic body. All the attempt of man to arrive at universal sympathy, universal love, and the understanding and knowledge of the inner soul of other existences is an attempt to beat thin, breach, and eventually break down by the power of the enlarging mind and heart the walls of the ego and arrive nearer to a cosmic consciousness. And lastly, in his letters on yoga, which I encourage everyone to read, I know that Mother was not very happy with Amal's constant correspondence to Sri Aurobindo in the letters, but there is much that we can learn from Sri Aurobindo there as to how Savitri was created, as to the process and the evolution of Savitri in the many, many, many fascicles or drafts that he used. I think I've mentioned before that he made 16 different drafts of Book 1, Canto 1. So the letters on yoga. The results of the opening to the cosmic mind. One is aware of the cosmic mind and the mental forces that move there, and how they work on one's mind and that of others. And one is able to deal with one's own mind with a greater knowledge and effective power. There are many other results, but this is the fundamental one. So we go back to the beginning. The magician order of the cosmic mind, coercing the freedom of infinity. The word coerce is compelling, or to compel or restrain by force or authority, to dominate or control. And so it's coercing this freedom of infinity, but with what? With the stark array of nature's symbol facts. Stark we should deal with briefly. Stark is very bare, very blunt. It can be even harsh or extreme. But here it's very simple, austere and bare, a stark array. An array, of course, is an orderly arrangement or a series of things, often an imposing series. So this stark array of nature's symbol facts. But nature is capitalized here. And so we have to see what Sri Aurobindo says. We have many, many dictionary definitions, and they're often very useful. But whenever we can go directly to Sri Aurobindo, this is what we should do, because he gives us the truth of these words that nothing else can offer. He says nature is an active force of conscious being, which realizes itself in its powers of self-experience, its powers of knowledge, will, self-delight, self-formulation, with all their marvelous variations, inversions, conservations, and conversions of energy, even perversions, is what we call prakriti, or nature, in ourselves as in the cosmos. And in the Life Divine, he gives us, all nature is simply the seer will, the knowledge force of the conscious being at work to evolve in force and form all the inevitable truth of the idea into which it has originally thrown itself. And in his book, Essays Divine and Human, he says, for nature is nothing but the will of God in action. And then we go back, coercing the freedom of infinity with the stark array of nature's symbol facts and life's incessant signals of event. An incessant signal, a signal that continues without interruption. It's ceaseless. It's unending. And what do these things do? They transmuted chance recurrences into laws. To transmute is to change from one nature or substance or form or even condition into another. To convert, in essence. And these recurrences, these are things that happen again and again. They keep reappearing. And what happened here? Transmuted chance recurrences into laws, a chaos of signs into a universe. So the coercing of the freedom of infinity, these symbol facts of nature, and the incessant signals of event in life, and these chance recurrences that are transmuted into laws, out of this chaos of signs is created a universe. And then there's a full stop, and he begins again. Out of the rich wonders and the intricate whirls. A whirl is a kind of spiral, something that curls or swirls. And what are these whirls? Of the spirit's dance with matter as its mask. How beautiful. The spirit's dance with matter as its mask. What does Sri Aurobindo tell us about matter? You know, there's so much we could devote the whole morning to that alone. But I'll give you some very important statements from him. In the Life Divine, he says to us, matter is by no means fundamentally real. It is a structure of energy, now fully verified by science also. In the synthesis of yoga, he says to us, matter means the involution of the conscious delight of existence in self-oblivious force and in a self-dividing, infinitesimally disaggregated form of substance. And essays in philosophy and yoga he gives us, matter is only so much mobile energy vibrating intensely into form. Scientists need to read this. In Essays Divine and Human, he tells us matter is but a form of consciousness. And in the synthesis of yoga, he says matter is a formation of life that has no real existence apart from the informing universal spirit which gives it its energy and substance. And then, in fact, matter itself is only an obscure form of the spirit. I hope this is helpful to everyone. It has certainly been very helpful to me to work for years on going through all of his works and finding these essential statements on all of the words that he capitalizes. So he says, out of the rich wonders and the intricate whirls of the spirit's dance with matter as its mask, the balance of the world's design grew clear. And out of this dance of the spirit with matter, capital M again, the design of the world grew clear. Its symmetry of self-arranged effects, managed in the deep perspectives of the soul. Now we have to hold there for a moment, because this symmetry, this correspondence or proportion or balance among these systems or parts of a system, this symmetry of self-arranged effects. Notice that he hyphenates self-arranged, which makes it one word, not self and arranged, but self-arranged. Managed in the deep perspectives of the soul. What is a perspective? It's a visible scene. It's a vista. It's an appearance of things relative to one another, as determined by their distance from the viewer. Lastly, and more weakly, it can be considered a mental view or outlook. But here it's managed in the deep perspectives of the soul. And the realism of its elusive art. Elusive, of course, is deceptive or unreal. And yet, there's a realism of its elusive art. Its logic of infinite intelligence, its magic of a changing eternity. And through all of this above, we learn of the world's design and the magic of a changing eternity. And yet, there is more. A glimpse was caught of things forever unknown. The letters stood out of the unmoving word. And here word is capitalized and very, very important. In the future poetry, which few people ever read, Sri Aurobindo says, the word is a sound expression of the idea. In the superphysical plane, when an idea has to be realized, one can, by repeating the word, expression of it, produce vibrations which prepare the mind for the realization of the idea. That is the principle of the mantras and of japa. One repeats the name of the divine, and the vibrations created in the consciousness prepare the realization of the divine. Let me read that again. It's so important. That is the principle of the mantras and of japa. One repeats the name of the divine, and the vibrations created in the consciousness prepare the realization of the divine. Sri Aurobindo goes on to say, it is the same idea that is expressed in the Bible. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. It is creation by the Word. In the Life Divine, he says, the silent and the active Brahman are not different, opposite, and irreconcilable entities, the one denying, the other affirming a cosmic illusion. They are one Brahman in two aspects, positive and negative, and each is necessary to the other. It is out of this silence that the Word, which creates the worlds, forever proceeds, for the Word expresses that which is self-hidden in the silence. And I must tell you that this is how the word or the sound or the syllable Om came to me. When we began to aspire to bring down the new music, the Adesh, the first Adesh that Mother gave to me, of many. We would sing in small groups or larger choirs. Someone would read a poem, a few lines of something. A few people would begin, and we would have all kinds of sounds. It would be beautiful sounds. It was very beautiful. But nearly 20 years ago now, I was given the word Om as the essential and only word for the Om choir. Let us continue then with Savitri. So we have a glimpse was caught of things forever unknown. The letters stood out of the unmoving word. In the immutable, nameless origin was seen emerging as from fathomless seas the trail of ideas that made the world. And I have to stop here for a bit because there's so much to share with you. In the immutable, nameless origin, something that is immutable is not subject or susceptible to change. The origin, the first stage of existence, the beginning, was seen emerging as from fathomless seas. Fathomless means impossible to measure the depth of, impossible to understand, incomprehensible. So, what was seen emerging as from fathomless seas? The trail of ideas that made the world. Now, Sri Aurobindo has so much to tell us about ideas. And I'm going to share quite a bit of that with you because it is so important. In the supramental manifestation, he has two quotes. A small little book. I think it was the last thing he wrote also. The idea is the realization of a truth in consciousness, as the fact is its realization in power. And the second quote, the idea is not a reflection of the external fact, which it so much exceeds. Rather, the fact is only a partial reflection of the idea which has created it. Now, he's going to introduce a new term to us, and I'll go through that. It's from the Life Divine. The view I am presenting goes farther in idealism. It sees the creative idea as real idea. Now, he capitalizes the R and the I, and he hyphenates the term, real idea, and it comes up often in his works. That is to say, a power of conscious force expressive of real being, born out of real being, and partaking its nature, and partaking of its nature, and neither a child of the void nor a weaver of fictions. It is conscious reality, capital R, throwing itself into mutable forms of its own imperishable and immutable substance. The world is therefore not a figment of conception in the universal mind, but a conscious birth of that which is beyond mind into forms of itself. And he continues in the Life Divine, in supermind being, consciousness of knowledge and consciousness of will are not divided, as they seem to be in our mental operations. They are a trinity, one movement with three effective aspects. Each has its own effect. Being gives the effect of substance. Consciousness, the effect of knowledge, of the self-guiding and shaping idea, of comprehension and apprehension. Will gives the effect of self-fulfilling force. But the idea is only the light of the reality illumining itself. It is not mental thought, nor imagination, but effective self-awareness. It is real idea. I'll carry on for a little more. So he says, the trail of the ideas that made the world, and sown in the black earth of nature's trance, the seed of the spirit's blind and huge desire, from which the tree of cosmos was conceived, and spread its magic arms through a dream of space. Let's cover for a few minutes this word, the Spirit. And Sri Aurobindo gives us so much here. In the letters on yoga, he says the Spirit is the consciousness above mind, the Atman, or self, which is always in oneness with the divine. In the essays on the Gita, he says, what we mean by spirit is self-existent being with an infinite power of consciousness and unconditioned delight in its being. In the Life Divine, he says, spirit is the soul and reality of that which we sense as matter. Matter is a form and body of that which we realize as spirit. And in the human cycle, he says the nature of the spirit is a spacious inner freedom and a large unity into which each man must be allowed to grow according to his own nature. So important. And in the essays in philosophy and yoga, he says, the spirit is the truth of our being. Mind and life and body in their imperfection are its masks, but in their perfection should be its molds. And finally, in the Life Divine, spirit is a final evolutionary emergence because it is the original involuntary element and factor. So we go back a couple of lines, and sown in the black earth of nature's trance, the seed of the spirit's blind and huge desire, from which the tree of cosmos was conceived. What is the tree of cosmos? Well, I have found that it's a common metaphor in many spiritual traditions. It's the tree with its roots in the heavens and its branches spread downward. and spread its magic arms through a dream of space. These mystical lines, so filled with beauty, speak of the tree of cosmos being conceived from the seed of the Spirit's huge, blind desire. And here, desire is not the term we traditionally understand, but the tremendous aspiration of the Spirit's seed, which is blind, that is, unseeing. Again, not blind as we know it. Immense realities took on a shape. There looked out from the shadow of the unknown the bodiless namelessness that saw God born, and tries to gain from the mortal's mind and soul a deathless body and a divine name. So let me just go briefly. I know I'm running a little late, but we should understand a little bit about the unknown that Sri Aurobindo capitalizes here. In the Life Divine, he says, the unknown is not the unknowable. It need not remain the unknown for us, unless we choose ignorance or persist in our first limitations. For to all things that are not unknowable, all things in the universe, there correspond in that universe faculties which can take cognizance of them, and in man, the microcosm. These faculties are always existent, and at a certain stage capable of development. We may choose not to develop them. Where they are partially developed, we may discourage and impose upon them a kind of atrophy. But fundamentally, all possible knowledge is knowledge within the power of humanity. The bodiless namelessness that saw God born, defying description. The nameless is inexpressible, and tries to gain from the mortal's mind and soul a deathless body and a divine name. And from all this magnificent creation that sees God come from the unknown, from a bodiless namelessness, capital N, trying to gain from our minds and souls a deathless body and a divine name. Namaste all, and thank you. Please let me know if this is too much on the definitions given by Sri Aurobindo, or if you feel it is acceptable.
It's great. It's great. Thank you.
It was beautiful, Naradji. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good that you go so in detail. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Namaste.
Thank you so much.